Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Reate Exo-M. A very, very weird knife, very, very interesting knife, and a true gravity knife, which I hope you understand the gravity of this review. This is a weird one, and I want to thank very much my Patreon patrons for supporting me and making it such that I can look at one of these guys and say, you know what, I should do a video about this and just go ahead and buy it. I bought it full retail. I forget exactly what retailer. But regardless, I just picked one up, and it means the world to me that my patrons support the channel and support me, and I appreciate them every day. So thank you very, very much, Patreon patrons. Next thing, let's do some size comparison. I'll go ahead and deploy the blade here, and what we're going to see is that this is actually not small, right? If we put this next to the PM2, we see handle size very similar. Sharpened blade length is about the same, and so these are very relatively similar knives. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2, and this is a bigger knife than that, and here it is against the Spyderco, and it is, again, a bigger knife than that. I also am going to compare it against another knife in the exoskeleton series, and that is this guy, the Reate Exo-M, and yes, I did open that gingerly. We'll talk about why in the Exo-M review, and what we're going to see here is that this is really weird, and so is this, but size-wise, frankly, they're not comparable objects, right? But at the same time, it is another from this same designer. And actually, let's talk about that for a second. Who is this designer? I honestly don't know, but I kind of want to meet him, right? This is Exoskeleton Designs. This is a person who is doing weird stuff. They did the original Reate Exo, they've done the Exo-M, and now they have done the Exo-K, which is certainly a knife. We'll talk more about that one later. But this series of knives has been completely unusual and completely interesting, right? Reate is a company that is a Chinese, they're a Chinese company. They make a lot of stuff for a lot of different people, right? A lot of knives that I've talked about on the channel are being manufactured by them, but these are own branded, and these are some of the most unique pieces that they make. They've made some other weird ones, but this is a really exciting series, right? Because they're doing things that are completely off the beaten path, right? Anybody who would do this has both my respect and a couple of other emotions, too, that we'll talk about in that review. But anyways, so that's that. Next thing, this guy is a true gravity knife, right? The only thing that opens and closes this knife is gravity, right? You do also have to operate this button if you lock the knife, which you very much should, but it is opened by gravity and closed by gravity. As a result, it is not legal to carry here in California. That is a dumb law, of course, but it is the law that we got, and this is part of the reason why you should support folks like AKTI and Knife Rights, who are trying to make this not a thing, these kinds of stupid laws. But anyways, I digress. My review is not based on carry outside the house. Because of those legal issues, I have used this guy pretty extensively indoors, but unfortunately, state of California prevented me from doing much else with it. So there you go. Note, this is $285, so not exactly a budget piece. And then finally, this is going to be a full review. My first one was a video where I basically said that this was the smartest, the Reate Exo was the smartest dumb thing ever. This actually merits a full video. So I'm going to go on ahead and talk to you right now about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting little knife right here. So on the good side, to start with, this is a little bit on the smaller side, right? This blade on this guy is right around maybe 3.some-odd inches here. It is not a whole lot of knife, and that is a beautiful thing, because this is already suspect enough, and pulling out a full-on 3.75-inch Exo pocket sword, a little bit of a thing. So bringing this down to a lower level is kind of a nice thing. Next thing, blade options. You actually get a number of options here. This is the Tonto blade, but they also have a double-edged dagger-style blade, as well as a drop-point blade that doesn't have this kind of Tonto-fication here. It's got a constant curve down there. But all of them are a little bit shorter than the OG Exo, and you've got those options there. You also have options for handles. This is the burlap micarta, but you can also get black micarta and some green micarta as well. So there is that, and so it's nice that you got those options. This actually, unlike the original one, does have a clip, and the clip works fine. It's a deep carry pocket clip, and it just kind of hangs out in your pocket here. And with the safety engaged, there is no way for this knife to open up in your pocket. I feel quite confident in saying that. Obviously, if you put sufficient mechanical strain, you could break the safety, but you could also break the knife with sufficient strain. So, nonetheless, this is a perfectly safe knife to carry in the pocket with this pocket clip there. That is a very nice thing, and it makes it actually workable to have in your pocket as you're wandering around going about your life, and that's a beautiful thing. Next thing, the action on this is quite good, right? It is a gravity knife, and so to deploy it, step 1 is you release and allow this handle to come up. Step 2, you allow gravity to assert its force upon the knife, and step 3, you pinch that handle shut, right? So the action is very easy, right? And after a while, it gets super intuitive and very, very quick, right? Mind you, it's no quicker than any other kind of pocket knife out there, right? There's a frame lock, and it deploys just as readily. It's the Holt Morpheus, by the way. But nonetheless, this is a very good action. It slides very nicely, very smoothly. There is no complaints at all about the nature of this action. This is solid. It's good to go. If you want a gravity knife, then by God, this is a good one. So there's that. Next thing, the blade on this guy is good. This is made of CPM 3V, which is honestly a little bit of a weird choice, right? I saw that. I was like, really? 3V? It's a steel that's really often meant for big, tough fixed blades, but they went for it here, so okay, I guess, sure, it's fine. But anyways, in my very limited admitted use, it seemed fine to me, but it also has an interesting two-tone to it, right? It's not just an optical illusion here. This down here is sort of an acid wash, and this up here is more of a polished surface. So you can actually see there is a difference in the reflectivity of the different portions of the blade. So it's kind of a cool thing. Right, personally, maybe I would have liked the reflectiveness throughout, but honestly, given that most of the knife is this kind of blasted titanium, having that little bit of two-tonitude sort of matches a little bit more here. Not the end of the world, but it is a thing. But the blade on the whole is good. It comes out to a reasonably thin edge right here, right? We can see comes down nice and thin. Reasonably thin there. It's not like, oh my god, the sliciest thing ever, but you know what? It absolutely works. Next thing, the texturing on this guy is good. Not only is the burlap micarta very easy to grip, as well as the button here, which is well textured and easy to grip, but also you get some texturing up top here, you get some texturing down here, some texturing here. Makes this guy very secure in the hand, right? When I have this grabbed, it is not going anywhere at all. It works quite well. Texture-wise, this is well designed, and honestly, it's pretty well built too. This feels a little bit more solid than the original one, right? It still does have some blade play here, and this is the case with nearly any out-the-front knife, with the possible exception being the Hawk Knife's deadlock, which has very specialized mechanisms in place to prevent that little bit of rattle. But this is, it's a little bit rattly, but it still feels a little nicer, honestly, than the OG Exo that I handled here. Mind you, this was made ways later, but still, it's it feels reasonably solid. It's well built. Even though it's a weird thing, it is not a gimmicky thing. Well, okay, even though it's a gimmicky thing, but it's not just a gimmick, right? It's a gimmick that's done very, very well, if that makes sense. Like, this feels every bit the quality of Reate. Next thing, this, once you get used to it, is very, very natural. It's an easy approach to use, right? And I'm sorry I keep doing it, but it is actually very enjoyable, right? Except, and this is, by the way, much harder than it normally is, because I'm underneath a camera here. I have less than a foot between my desktop and my camera up here, so it's a little trickier to do this, but it feels very natural to just, like, take this out, you grab it from your pocket, pull thumb back, slant down, and you have yourself a blade, and you can lock it there afterwards. But it ends up feeling very natural. At first, it's very unintuitive to people who aren't used to gravity knives, and I would always show somebody how this works the first time you hand it to them, rather than just like, hey, here's a knife, because otherwise they could hurt themselves. But once you get used to it, it is a very, very natural operation to use. It is also wildly fidgety. As you're seeing here, it is kind of a pleasure to play with. As weird as that that sounds. It just has a nice smoothness. It has good mechanical feel to it. If you like your knife as a fidget toy, this isn't a bad one at all. Of course, be careful, right? You need to keep in mind because this guy can move in ways that you don't anticipate, but it is still definitely a thing. And then finally, this little safety switch is crucial. That is what allows this to be a carry knife. The prior one just had this part flopping in the breeze. And so anytime this was up, the blade could deploy, and anytime it was up, the blade could fall down. This guy actually has this little button, and that button engages with this little path right here, such that when you push it forward, the knife cannot actually, this handle cannot come open. So if I push this forward, no matter how much I shake, this top part isn't coming out. So that means that this guy will not open in your pocket. And it also means if you have the blade open, that the knife cannot close, right? There is a barrier here. This little piece of titanium is forced up against this one, and this can't go anywhere. So you can set this down. There's just no concern. And that is good, right? That, frankly, probably should have been there all along, right? It is a better idea to have that present than absent, and it would have made the original one better, but I like having it here. And the thing is, if you don't like that for whatever reason, well, just don't use it, right? You lose nothing by virtue of having it there, right? You can recreate the original Exo by just never touching this button. And then you have the original in all of its dangerous glory, but this is just good. Allowing it to lock both open and closed is nice and just makes this guy finally safe for carry. And so to me, all of that is the good, is that it is well, this safety makes it a heck of a lot safer than the original one. Is wildly fidgety. It feels pretty natural, like the motion to use it and disengage it works very well. It also has good texture and design. It is a good blade. It's got a good action. Nice clip. The handle options are nice to have. Good blade options. A little on the smaller side, which is a beautiful thing if you're already doing something this illegal. And it has a hidden, I'm sorry, that is completely a lie. My bad, that shouldn't have been on there. My bullet points were out of date. I originally said hidden lanyard, but then I remembered that this guy is filled. So I should have removed that. But anyways, I digress. What is great about this knife is that this is still super weird. And weird being great may be unintuitive to some people, but if you're not familiar with the knife market in 2023, it is wildly boring. Oh my God, is the knife market boring right now. There are so many people producing so many damn D2 liner locks, including Reate, to be clear, and just spamming the world with things that you could show me your brand new, newest model, and in 2 seconds I would have forgotten what it looks like, because it looks like every other damn thing out there. This is not that. This is unusual. And more importantly, this is just as weird and wild as the original Exo, but it's done in a way that is actually practical for everyday carry. That is a beautiful thing. They have made this knife just as weird and wild and as unusual and as cool for knife collectors as the original Exo was, but they've made it in such a format that it is actually carryable if, legally speaking, you are able to do so. So I love the fact that they made this, because everything else that's being made, it feels like, is so viciously boring that just this bit of contrast of something bizarre, weird, that really nothing else out there is like, that's a beautiful thing. So to me, that's what's great. This is super weird. And in 2023, that's what it takes to stand out. You need to be both excellent and weird, and I would maybe go so far as to say this passes that bar. So anyways, that's what's great to me. On the bad side, the price here is a bit high, right? $285. Oh boy. That's a lot. Mind you, there's nothing to compare it to, right? Like, what are you comparing this with? Relative to every other titanium gravity knife, this is exactly the price, right? There aren't really other comparable pieces, and I gotta say, it is pretty damn well made, right? It is done like every bit of a Reate, so in that sense, it's pretty solid, but it is high. The price is high, 100%. There are also major legal questions here. Not only is this a true gravity knife, and that is a thing that is often referenced in statutes here, but if you want to, even if you don't have that law, you could make a pretty strong argument that you are operating it with a button on the handle, which might make it an automatic in some other jurisdictions. Again, talk to your lawyer. Do not listen to a YouTuber here. Talk to people who actually know what the laws are in your local area before you carry this guy. buy, or even before you order it, right? But lawyer up before you carry this guy, because depending on the jurisdiction you're in, this guy could be a very, very felonious sort of affair. So there is that. Next thing, this is still a little bit dangerous for a brand new user, right? The first time you get this out of the package, please be careful, because it does operate in a way that most knives do not, right? If you are not used to it and you have your hand right here, I'm going to go ahead and lock this while my hand is right here, then you lift that up, it could very easily come out and puncture your hand, right? This is a knife that doesn't function like a lot of them do, and so even for seasoned collectors, respect this guy. You get used to it after a while, which is itself kind of a danger, but nonetheless, respect the knife at first, and don't just hand this to somebody and say, here's a knife, because that could be bad, right? Show them how it works. Okay, unlock, lift this up, let the blade fall down, lock. It's not hard to show off, but you kind of need to first, right? But the lock does definitely help a lot, and it removes that sense of I'm just picking up the knife. Like, you pick it up and suddenly, like, okay, with the original, the OG, right, you could pick the knife up at certain angles and suddenly end up stabbing something, right? So the lock definitely makes that a little bit easier. Then finally, actually not quite finally, this is not a particularly subtle knife, right? In terms of ways to open it quietly, you can do this, right, where you open it up, and you push this guy out and then close it. It's a little weird, right? But most of the time, it's the full-on snickety snick, 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 fake balisong sort of approach, which is a little on the not subtle side, right? There's a thing you pull out of your pocket and do that, and Irma from accounting is diving under the table, calling a SWAT team, that kind of thing. So do keep that in mind. And it is also still a little bit on the rattly side, right? Carrying this guy is beautiful, because if you end up in a situation where you got some Spanish guitar going on, castanet right there with you, right? So it has that added bonus, right? But at the same time, unless you need the tactical maraca approach, this is not going to be a quiet knife. This is going to be one that rattles in your pocket a little bit, and also rattles a little bit while you use it, right? So this is a very rattly knife, and if that bothers you, well, this ain't for you, right? So anyways, there you go. That's, to me, the bad, is that it is very much a tactical maraca. It is not particularly subtle. It is still a little dangerous for a brand new user. There are major legal questions, which means you need to talk to a lawyer before you even think about ordering this guy. And the price is a little bit high, although it is well made, and there's really nothing comparable, so I don't really know what to compare it to. On the final conclusion front, there's nothing ugly here, right? The original one, but the original one, final conclusion, was really smart and also really dumb, right? It was exactly the right thing to do to mix up the market, but they did it in a way that just wasn't the smartest approach. And I gotta say, in some ways, I still agree, right? This is still very smart, and much more so than the original. With good options, a good action, a nice blade, good build, natural intuitive use, fidgetiness to it. Safety makes it carryable, and by the way, I mean intuitive after you've got the hang of it, which is kind of a weird flavor of intuitive, but you carry one, you'll see what I mean. But it is also fidgety, the safety makes it carryable, and uncommon and weird is a virtue of high regard in the market in 2023. Yet, with all that smart, it is still dumb. There are still massive legal issues. It is still a little dangerous. There's still no real subtle way to open it, and it is still a maraca worth of rattling. The first Exo, though, felt like a gimmick. It felt like something that you would buy if you were a knife collector, and you have to show your knife friends, or to just show your friends generally, right? That is a knife you buy, and people are like, oh my god, you have that? And you might carry it if you felt like a jackass one day to keep it in the slip just so you could have the gravity knife with you and be that person, right? But the first Exo was just like, yeah, okay, that's a cool thing for a knife collector maybe, but it's not practical, it's not reasonable. It wasn't really a knife in the classical sense, which is why I didn't do a full review. This is actually a pocket knife, right? This knife works for daily carry. It has a clip. It can safely be carried in a pocket, right? That is an absolutely beautiful thing. It is a little bit more practical, right? With a blade size that's just a little bit more reasonable in many situations. It feels like a real knife that a person could use and enjoy. This could be somebody's only knife. They'd be kind of a weird somebody, but by God, they could do it. right? And you get to feel like a little bit of a jackass too if you carry this guy, I imagine, right? There were entire groups of people who'd be like, what the heck are you carrying, right? And that could be a wonderful thing. It's an icebreaker, although do not take out your knife as an icebreaker. I'd like to be very clear. Generally speaking, HR frowns on this. Anyways, I digress. So, this is actually a pocket knife that actually works for actual carry for actual humans. And that's kind of cool. So you might be thinking, well, Nick, you said that it's smart and it's a pocket knife and it's no longer a cute gimmick. Do you recommend it? Well, no. The thing is, here's the thing. There are many knives out there that are just as functional as cutting tools, if not more so, right? And especially for this price, the sky is your oyster. You got all kinds of different approaches here, right? And those other tools may not have the legal entanglements that this does. They may not have the safety concern of handing it to some random person and then them cutting their head off, right? Actually, that would take work. Don't cut your head off. That's a bad idea. But anyways, it doesn't have all of those concerns, and you can get a bunch of stuff that doesn't have those concerns for under this price that will cut as well as, if not way better than this guy here. So, do I recommend it? No. Not really. This isn't the knife you should go out and buy. Could I recommend it, though? Yes. Yes, the first gen I could not recommend, right? It was mostly a gimmick. It was mostly a menace, let's be real here. The Exo-M is a gimmick, absolutely, but it is also a little tiny menace, but it's mostly a meaningful tool. It is mostly a solid piece. And so if somebody comes up to me and says, Nick, I want a gravity knife. First thing is, okay, you're interesting. Second thing out of my mouth is Reate Exo-M. There you go. Case closed, right? This is a knife that I could very readily recommend to somebody who wants that. Or if somebody says, I live in a place with zero laws and I want something completely ridiculous that cuts things. Reate Exo-M. That absolutely works. If that kind of thing comes up, then there's no question in my mind. This is right where I'm sending them. I would recommend it in that particular case. If you want what this is offering, you should do this. You should not even consider the OG Exo. You should do this instead. This is everything that the OG was, except maybe a little bit of size. But it's just done better, and it's a better functional tool. So I could recommend this to a person who is sufficiently strange. But mostly, I'm still really glad to see Reate mixing it up, right? It is wonderful to see something new and innovative coming out of them. This is a company that has done, the Jack series, that have, wild assembly approaches. They have shown that they are able to do really interesting and innovative things. They just generally don't. And it's great to see something weird like this, right? And it's great to see them continuing to do weird things, although the XOK is a slightly different story. We'll get there when that happens. But I want to see them continuing to push the boundaries. I want to see them continuing to try new things. And because doing something like this makes a knife that actually stands out, that actually is memorable, and is among the Reate catalog entries, one of relatively few where I'm like, oh yeah, that's its own distinct thing, and you should consider it, right? So it's not a gem. Absolutely not. It's not the right choice for everybody. But for somebody who's looking for a carry knife that is a little bit more exotic, this might just be the thing. So anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting and that you understood the gravity of my my opinions here, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.